With Locked On Jaguars, the franchise tag has been given to Cam Robinson. I'm going to tell you why I'm perplexed and I think it's a mistake as we get into part two of our Building the Team series, and we'll do it right here on a Wednesday, Hump Day, on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's happening, good people? We thank you for joining us here on Locked On Jaguars, which is your team every day and making us your first listen. And as a reminder, we are free on all platforms and wherever you get your podcast. We're happy to have you join us today. This is part two of my Build the Team series that I've been doing, or that I started. I explained Monday what it was about. I said I was going to spend the next 4 days, which is yesterday, today, tomorrow, and the day after that, explaining to you what I think the Jaguars should do or can do. And I'm going to give you some different scenarios. I'm not going to pick all of the same people every week and every day. Let's not bury the lead, though. Yesterday, the Jaguars placed the franchise tag on left tackle Cam Robinson. And I said left tackle with emphasis, because Cam Robinson has told me right to my face that he has never, ever, ever lined up in a game at any position on the offensive line other than left tackle. In fact, he was emphatic about it. He was so emphatic when I asked him had he played anything other than left tackle. He rolled his eyes and looked at me while he was drinking some water and said, nope. That's exactly what he told me. So we can speculate all day on whether or not the Jaguars think or view him as playing another position. That might be the case. But let's get down to the nuts and bolts of it. First and foremost, I've been going back and forth on social media with people since yesterday. This is the best place for you to get my opinion about stuff. So sometimes what happens is things have a tendency to start taking on a life of their own, and it's easier to explain it here than it is in 140 characters. I don't dislike Cam Robinson as a player. It's not the point. The point that I made about Cam Robinson 2 years ago was that at some point you were going to have to make the decision, is he or isn't he your future at left tackle? This is in his third season. The Jaguars still haven't quite made that decision. And according to most fans, some people say he's a stopgap. $17 million is a lot of a stopgap. Kelvin Beachum is a stopgap. And Kelvin Beachum's probably playing for $4 or $5 million, and he's been here. Kelvin Beachum was supposed to be the stopgap for the Cam Robinson or the Jaguars are fine. My head is about to explode sometimes when I hear all of these footballisms from people. The other thing is, well, you can Jonathan Ogden, whoever you pick at number one, and let him play something else. Let me tell you about the Jonathan Ogden situation in Baltimore. Yeah, Jonathan Ogden did not play left tackle his first year. It's because Baltimore had under contract, they didn't franchise tag anyone. They had a veteran. And they felt like, okay, 1 year over there, they didn't put Jonathan Ogden somewhere else because he had to learn how to play left tackle. The dude's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He knew how to play left tackle. He might have been the best left tackle on the team. But they knew for them, the other guy probably couldn't play anywhere else. So it's like, John, go do this for a year and then you'll do that. That's different than franchise tagging a guy. Somebody else said, well, maybe they don't want to leave holes on their team. This isn't leaving a hole if you don't franchise somebody or re-sign them. Leaving a hole would be cutting someone when they're still under contract and creating a hole. This is not that. You're filling a hole when you franchise tag a dude. That's what you're doing. You're filling a hole. I don't know if the franchise tag was meant for guys who aren't franchise players. But yet and still, here we go again. We're using the franchise tag on a guy. Now, I would perfectly take this explanation. I don't have a choice anyway. But if the Jaguars feel like Cam Robinson is an ascending player who's 26, 27 years old, and you just don't let guys like that go, and the new staff feels like, hey, we can do more with him than the last staff did, or they look at the tape and go, y'all people don't know what you're talking about. That kid is better than you think. I totally get it. I've said in the past that I'm not great at evaluating offensive linemen. I totally get if you believe or if you see something that I don't see in Cam Robinson. And I don't think he's terrible by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's all right. My only point with the Jaguars is this. Cam Robinson isn't good enough for you to not take the best player in the draft if he's a left tackle or an offensive tackle. Walker Little isn't good enough for you to not take a guy. He's not good enough for you to take what Equan Wu or Evan Neal and not play them at left tackle. If Walker Little was that good, they wouldn't franchise Cam. Some of y'all, you're going in a circle. You're chasing your own tail, really. They wouldn't franchise Cam. Maybe, just maybe, the Jaguars believe two things. They went to the combine and Aiden Hutchinson blew them away, and they're going to take the best player in the draft, and that's who it is. So now they look around. Well, now, is Cam Robinson better than anyone we could get in the second round? Probably. And are we willing to gamble that the only guy who's in free agency at left tackle that's better than Cam Robinson, meaning Teron Armstead, is he going to come here? And is he going to be healthy? And should we sign Cam Robinson or franchise Cam Robinson over taking the 32-year-old off-injured Teron Armstead and pay him way more money over a long period of time? That's totally logical and totally understandable. That's not what we're dealing with here when we deal with the fan base. What we're dealing with the fan base is y'all guys are looking at this like a Survivor. Y'all looking at it like the Jaguars have to survive next season or they're going to be eliminated from the island if they don't win at least 8-9 games. So whatever we got to do to get to that point, even if it's mortgage our future, that's what we'll do. Football is not built that way. That's going to get you in a world of hurt and a world of trouble. You need to understand that there's baby steps, and everybody wants to use the Cincinnati Bengals as not being baby steps. Let me explain it to you. That was baby steps, okay? Joe Burrow played most of the season, and they still had a top 5 pick. Those are baby steps. This didn't come out of nowhere with them. Josh Taylor was about to get fired, whatever his name is, the coach in Cincinnati. I do a show every single week. It's out today on Locked On NFL with James Rapine, who's Locked On Bengals and works for SI with Cincinnati, and he's from Cincinnati. And he told me week after week after week after week that those people wanted to run Taylor out of that city. Cincinnati didn't up jump the boogie and all of a sudden just get good, okay? They've been kind of bad for like 3 straight years. They had 2 straight top 5 picks. Now, I know you guys are saying, comparatively speaking to the Jaguars, that's real good because the Jaguars have had seemingly top 5 picks since I was in elementary school, and it hasn't worked out. I get it. But miss me with all of this logic that 3 days ago, you guys thought that Cam Robinson should have been given the franchise tag. There's only 1 or 2 people that I feel that thought Cam Robinson was fine. I think Jeff Lockman was one, and I think Alfred Crow was another. That I'll give him credit. I'd stick with him, and I go somewhere. I get it. But all the rest of you Duvalians that's all of a sudden coming out of the woodwork now, and this isn't because I didn't think it was what they were going to do. What I'm hoping it's not is Trent Baalke and anyone else who's still in that building from the past saying, and Baalke hinted at it. He hinted at it, and I was hoping he was being forward, but it sounds like he's been a little bit, because he's been here for 2 years now. He ain't just come out of nowhere. This is his 3rd season. When he said the other day, we got to stop good players from leaving our building, I wanted to roll my eyes because I'm thinking like, okay, maybe he's talking about Jalen, or maybe he's talking about Ngakoue, maybe he's talking about Calais Campbell, maybe to a certain extent he's talking about Fournette and Allen Robinson. He can't be talking about anybody that's on that team right now, is he? Apparently I was wrong. This sort of smells and feels, and maybe I'm being a little bit emotional, like what I hoped wouldn't happen. And what I hope wouldn't happen is they're making decisions of today based on what has been and what happened. This is why you want a clean slate, because nobody cares when they come in about what happened and what has been. So that's my mindset, and that's my thinking about this. You know, we've been doing the series. We did a series. Yesterday, we gave Jaguars a bunch of players, but it did not include Cam Robinson being the tag. Do you think it changed the way I'm doing business? You're damn right it changes the way I'm doing business, because it is the NFL. It is economics. And I'll use the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs as an example of what I absolutely mean by that, and why team building is just as important as talent procurement. However, I will tell you this. One thing I will tell you is that the Jaguars are in a little bit of a different position than a lot of these other teams I'm talking about, is because I don't think they have the luxury of cherry picking when it comes to not taking the best player, because they have needs everywhere. I'll discuss it and a little bit more in just a second after I tell you guys about Built Bar. Built Bar, I've been talking about Built Bar for a long time. You guys know my favorite is salted caramel, but if you heard me recently, I tried that banana cream pie in the puffs, in the Built Bar puffs. Man, let me tell you something. It is absolutely delicious. In fact, I'm getting a lot of feedback from people in my network that their favorites might be the puffs of all the Built Bars. I didn't believe it. I heard it for weeks and weeks and weeks and months. And me being an old school guy, I didn't want to change because I love salted caramel so much. Well, I ran out of salted caramel and I tried the banana cream pie puff. Lord, have mercy. It is absolutely good for you. It is good. It's low calorie, high protein, and it's the first protein infused marshmallow puff. It is unbelievable. It's fluffy, it's creamy, it's all of that, and it is absolutely delicious. And you can get it at built.com and use the promo code LOCK15 to save on your first order of Built Bars. Make sure you check them out also on @bar_built on social media, on Twitter, so you can understand and know all of the new things and new experiences that Built Bar is putting out on a weekly basis. But try those puffs. That's another recommendation I'm giving you. Try those puffs and make sure you get tuned in to Built Bar at built.com. All right, man, we're rolling along with you. I said I was going to use an example of Baltimore and Kansas City. So Baltimore, a couple of years ago, if you guys remember the conversation we had this on Locked On Jaguars too. Baltimore was shopping around Orlando Brown Jr., Baby Zeus. And there were people saying, I wouldn't trade a second round pick for Baby Zeus and you got to pay him. I wouldn't do that. Well, the Chiefs did it. And I will tell you this now, the Chiefs did it knowing that their first round pick was going to be a late first round pick. It's way down, and Baltimore ended up getting it. But 1 year in, after being on a tag, or in the final year of his contract, the Chiefs actually tagged Orlando Brown Jr., Baby Zeus. So one team's trash, not really trash, or asset is another team's treasure, because he's going to start for him at left tackle. And by the way, he's protecting Patrick Mahomes. And they had two other rookies on their offensive line. I'm telling you that for a reason. Hang on. Now, the reason why he's expendable in Baltimore is because he wanted to play left tackle instead of right tackle. And Baltimore already has a franchise left tackle. So they had to play the economics part of it, and they couldn't really pay him the way he wanted to be paid. So they decided to get some compensation and move on. And we found one Zeus, we could find another Zeus, Baby Zeus. For the Chiefs, it's a little bit different. They revamped their entire offensive line, and they wanted somebody to come in and do exactly what he did, along with Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey, the two rookies. So here we go. One of the excuses I hear from the Jaguars is, well, you can keep Cam now and get a left tackle next year. The guy next year is going to be a rookie also, if you take a rookie. Well, you can keep Cam and move him to right tackle. But those are the same people that told me you don't draft Evan Neal and move Walker Little to right tackle, because Walker Little's never played right tackle. Well, Cam Robinson never played right tackle. In fact, Cam has played left tackle longer than it's even worse when you played it such a long time to make the switch, even though that's what the Jaguars might have planned. I wouldn't want a $17 million experiment. I think they re-signed him to play him at left tackle. And I think Walker Little's moving to right tackle. And if you draft somebody at number 1 and you don't play them at right tackle, you play them at guard, then he probably shouldn't be the number 1 pick. Hello? When you pick first with that dude playing at his strength, at the position that helps you the most. Unless you're like the Ravens back in the day where you had a pretty good player, but you knew he was getting older, so you kind of moved on from him, and you let Ogden play one position for a year because it helped your team. That's different than franchising tagging a guy when the guy was on his way out the door. Because you can draft that guy number 1 and let him play left tackle, and then use the $17 million that you used to sign Cam. You can sign a right tackle who's a stopgap guy, or you can play Walker Little over there. And if you don't play Walker Little at one of these tackle spots, I don't think he's a guard, by the way, because a lot of his problems that you see, he struggled at guard too. Now Walker Little becomes a waste of a pick. By the way, Walker Little at 42 would have been the compensation you gave up for Orlando Zeus Brown. So you see how I'm tying all that together of why this team can't seem to get out of their own way. Baltimore sent a late second-round pick to Baltimore. Kansas City sent a late second-round pick to Baltimore, and now they franchise tagged this kid. If Walker Little doesn't start, that's a middle second-round pick that you kept and you wasted if you get Cam Robinson and another tackle in the draft. At some point, you have to understand, this team can actually walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. Like I said, the one definition I will totally accept, and I have to accept it all because it doesn't matter, nobody's trying to appease me, is that they evaluate Cam Robinson a lot differently than I do. And that's perfectly fine. I've been wrong about people all the time. Or they've evaluated the free agency market. They think that he's a better option than Teron Armstead. Nonetheless, what we've done is we've adjusted. We were going to do it anyway. I'm going to tell you now who I've decided in day 2. I'm going to give you a different group of people that the Jaguars can sign in free agency. Just a quick recap. Yesterday, I gave the Jaguars, well, I don't know what I gave the Jaguars. I wrote it down here. I gave the Jaguars yesterday tight end C.J. Uzomah, two wide receivers, Cedric Wilson and Christian Kirk, Alex Kappa at guard, and they kept Adam Gostis. Dewan Smoot was already under contract for a year, so that's null and void. In the draft, I had them taking Aiden Hutchinson, Bernard Raymond, the tackle out of Central Michigan, George Pickens and Lewis Seen in third round. I don't think either one was going to be there, but this is the way that draft fell that I did yesterday, and I'm going to do the same thing today. I'm going to run that draft right on back and let you know what these picks are going to be. But today, let's do free agency first. With the Jaguars keeping Cam Robinson, I'm leaning towards them taking Aiden Hutchinson. I think they think Aiden Hutchinson is the best player in the draft. I heard that a couple of months ago, because he came in and measured at 2 inches taller than I thought. So now his numbers and his performance, they take on a different light because that's a bigger man doing those things. And by the way, everybody's going crazy over Travon Walker's workout. It depends on like how you saw it. Like Travon Walker was not considered that, but then when you saw it, it's like, oh, well, his numbers are real comparable to those of Aiden Hutchinson. So it's funny how one guy has everything to lose and another guy has everything to gain. But we'll see. So right now, I think it's Aiden Hutchinson. I think that's the pick. So based on that, what do you do in free agency? I think the Jags could still look for those slot receivers. However, now that you're not going to use a second-round pick on a tackle, I think there's a chance for you to get a higher grade receiver at the second pick, as opposed to having to reach for a tackle who was probably in the same on the same wavelength as whoever you're going to pick at wide receiver. So I did it a little bit differently, and I told you I would. I say the Jags go out there and get a veteran in Allen Robinson at wide receiver to play outside. I say now that they have decided on Cam Robinson, I think you get a buddy and stick right next to him, and you go out and get Laken Tomlinson, the left guard out of San Francisco. You just got to pay him a little bit more money. Now I'm addressing the left side as opposed to the right side. Yesterday was Alex Kappa. This is not either or. It's just that these are different ways that you can look at the talent procurement from Jacksonville. I'm going to keep Kappa and C.J. Uzomah on this free agency list. So addressing both guard spots in free both guard spots in free agency. And then continue to address the tight end position that they said that they're going to make a priority. Now, I got a couple of changes here. I got a couple of switch ups because here's what has to happen. The team has to use this money. At some point, if you don't use the money in the draft, you're very limited in free agency. You're very limited in the draft. So you got to try to use the money and try to help your team, because once you get into the draft, unless you start trading back and getting more picks, you're very limited on how many picks you can get. There's also a cap for how much money you can spend on draft players. And the more drafted players you get, the more money you can spend. But they can't all be high picks. You have to be able to spread that out over the entire draft. So you're also not going to go into the season with 15 rookies. Well, they did that before, but you're not going to go into the season with 15 rookies. So 2 players that I did not have the team taken yesterday. How about Marcus Williams, a safety? And this would really be forgetting about last year's free agency, because that would include Rashawn Jenkins. How about Marcus Williams, a safety, thinking that he's going to team up with Andre Sisco? And then you need a big back, so you don't have to use, if you can get a big back for a small price, a guy who's a short yardage runner in James Conner, and try to get him to leave that mess out in Arizona. So Allen Robinson, CJ Uzoma, Laken Tomlinson, and Alex Kappa on offense, along with James Conner. And the lone defensive player would be Marcus Williams, which means that there may be a focus and a shift to defense as we move forward for the draft. I'll tell you who I think they drafted, and I'll tell you how this all plays out in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right. So now that we have free agency done, let's do the draft. I told you guys that I would take Aiden Hutchinson, number 1. That has not changed. I'm going to go with Aiden Hutchinson. Here's something that I'm going to do a little bit differently. I'm going to do this a little bit differently because of the additions that were made on in free agency. I'm going to take, in the second round, I'm going to take Christian Miller at the top of the second round, another linebacker who I think really helped himself in the draft, and you could line him up next to Miles Jack, and they can be Mike Caldwell's version of Devin White and Levante David. So I'll go with Christian Miller and Miles Jack, 2 guys that can run like the wind. Both have really, really good size. Christian Miller ran under a 4.5. I think he ran a 4.5 or around thereabouts. That's where I'm going. Christian Miller. I'm now going to come back in round 3 with 2 straight picks. All right. In round 3 with 2 straight picks, I'm going to take wide receivers. I'm going to go back and touch that position again because all you've added is Allen Robinson. And I'm going to go with Wan'Dale Robinson and give you another one, Robinson, who is a slot wide receiver, and Christian Watson, a kid that's about 6'4", that runs like the wind. Now, in this mock draft I did, they were both there. I don't think Christian Watson will be there, but that's where I'm going. So now on offense, you added Allen Robinson, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Christian Watson in the draft to give 3 wide receivers to Trevor, along with CJ Uzoma at tight end, right? In the fourth round, I'm going to go defensive tackle, and I hope like hell that Travis Jones from UConn is still there. If Travis Jones is not there for UConn, then I look for them to maybe take Fedarian Mathis, the kid out of Alabama, to add more depth and size along the defensive line. So let's go through it. Aiden Hutchinson, number 1, edge rusher to go opposite Josh Allen, who the Jags don't consider a number 1. I don't care what they tell you. Christian Watson, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Christian Miller. Linebacker, wide receiver. And then in the 4th round for Fedarian Mathis or Jones, the kid from UConn, whichever one is there. To go along with Allen Robinson, Laken Tomlinson, Marcus Williams, James Conner, CJ Uzoma, and Alex Kappa. And that's day 2. Day 3 and day 4, we're going to have some more surprises for you. But a wrinkle was thrown in all of this with the tag of Cam Robinson. And remember, man, it's just disagreement. But sometimes when I see people say stuff that makes no sense, let me tell you what I don't think makes sense. That In fact, if you go back to Monday's podcast, I said that free agency and tags will be tails for the draft. So it actually decreases your flexibility and it increases the likelihood that you're going in a certain direction. And it sort of tells everyone what you're going to do. You franchise this guy at left tackle, you sort of pigeonholing yourself into not taking another left tackle, right? Because it doesn't make a lot of sense, especially if Cam signs the tender, because then you can't rescind it. So now you got to pay him that money. And this whole we can put it off till next year, it goes back to people thinking that all of these guys are sort of monolithic, like they're just robots, like they're not individual people. So if they're not individual guys, why do you even go to the combine in the first place? You're looking for individual traits that separate a guy and that makes him a part of your program more than you are just looking for any dude that's going to fill the spot. So just pushing it off to next year, like, oh no, we don't need to get Evan Neal. We can get you. Are you sure that there's going to be an Evan Neal in next year's draft? Have you done a deep dive into that for you to say that as a fan? You just don't know. And I think teams that do that seem to get themselves in trouble. I made a point yesterday that Jawan Taylor, who everybody wants to run out of town, was taking one pick behind Debo Samuel. And everybody and their brother came out, well, we needed an offensive lineman at the time. Yeah, how'd that work out for you? You still need an offensive lineman, and that dude's damn near an all-pro. How'd that work out? You see one point? Take ball players, the best players you can get, and it's going to work out for you more than it will of trying to fill squares with guys who may not be better. I don't have a problem with the Jaguars tagging Cam Robinson, but I have a problem with people that don't understand what it means over the long haul and why you attempt to rationalize it. I just think maybe the rationale that people are giving me is wrong. Maybe the Jaguars just think Cam Robinson's better than I think he is, and maybe the tape says so, and maybe I'm just not good at evaluating. I would accept that in a heartbeat. But you got to understand that when you start caping up for the team and you start creating and making stuff up, you're being just as bad as I am, or probably even worse. You don't know the reason they do what they do. I don't know the reason they do what they do. But I'm not going to definitively sit here and tell you I know when I know I don't. I know what you need to do. You need to check out the Locked On NFL show. It's on today. Matter of fact, me and James Rapine, we have one that's out right now. Every single day, there's experts from around the league that can give you the stories, the big stories from all over the NFL. And certainly, they had some stories yesterday with Russ Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. Those things were critical and were big. So make sure you check that out. Also, the Locked On NFL Draft podcast with Eric Crocker and Ryan Tracy. You have a former NFL cornerback and you have a master at analytics. They put that together and break it down and make it a real great show for all of you guys. Until next time, man, you guys take care of each other. Continue to do the right thing. It's your man, Tony Wiggins, here with Locked On Jaguars. Tomorrow, part 3 of Building the Team, and then Friday, part 4 of Building the Team. And then you can do an assessment, tell me what you all think about it, and we'll probably recap and review that on Monday. Until then, take care and enjoy